Test, 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 testing. All right, so you should hear something. Let me know if you are. I'm gonna wait a couple minutes to start. So if you aren't seeing the stream live, all right. I was listening to myself echo. It was exciting. So I'm gonna wait before I get started. But if you have any questions, I'm probably gonna start answering questions in a few minutes. You can just post them now. I've just got a little sample that I've been running. So if you're not in HipChat, just go to the YouTube page settings and jump in. I'm just trying to test. All right, it looks like I can hear myself. So if you guys can hear me, let me know. To juggle a bunch of windows here just to make sure everything's working. Awesome. All right, so let me just pull up the video so you guys can see me, and then I will get started. All right, so you guys should see me. I have a bunch of questions that I've received via email, so I'm gonna jump into those first, and then as we have time, I'll start answering any of the questions that you guys post in the comments here on HipChat or on the YouTube page. So I got a few questions from students who were interested in this whole iPhone game thing. So I was working on an update for Bomb Dodge, which is an iPhone game that I'm working on, and I'll just post the link in case no one's seen it. So it's tentatively called Protect the Bomb, but we really want to call it Bomb Dodge. So I've got it under a different name on the App Store, just as a test release. And some people were interested in making games, and it's something that's really been driving my passions for creating iPhone apps. It's the reason I got into app development. So I wanted to give like a little tutorial on how to do it. And the other night when I was fixing a bug, I was like, all right, I'm just gonna do a little tutorial on games. So I started it. I've got 10 videos recorded. We haven't edited anything yet. But you can see it running right here. So it's a simple little game. You get points for moving these blocks around. It uses multi-touch, so we're using gestures to control. And let me just bring it up on screen so that you don't just look at my face while I'm demoing it. All right, so here's the game. I'm going to just bump it over. So I just have 2 blocks. Now you could replace these with images. I haven't done that yet. That's one of the customizations that I'll get to in this tutorial series. The point right now is showing you how to get started with an app. So your apps aren't always going to look perfect from the get-go. They're going to have some test code in them. They're going to have test images. Until you get art from an artist or something like that, or even music from a composer, you're going to work with something that might not look like the final product. And so you have to use your imagination a little bit here. And the point of this is I just wanted to show a basic game. So the gameplay is you just move a block around, you get points. And if you don't move stuff, you lose points. So that's what's going on right now. Let me just highlight the mouse. The other thing that I'm demoing here is how you can have multiple screens. And this applies to games, but this also applies to any other app that you'll be building. So here I have a pause screen that pops up. And what I've done here is on the left here, you can see that there's a few different screens. We've got the view controller screen, which is going to be managing everything. And then we've got the game view, which is what we're seeing here. That's the green background. We've got the pause view, and that's these set of buttons that popped into the screen. And then we've got the store view, which I haven't gone to yet. So if I open up the store, you can see the store. There's some in-app purchase power-ups. These eggs just give you more points. This is from a little prototype that I made a while ago where you just buy these eggs and they give you extra points. So I just grabbed those assets, I threw them in. I created a store that can save and load from disk. And then you can add stuff. You can buy these eggs. The more eggs you have when you're actually playing the game, the more points that you'll get. So it's just a simple little thing. It shows you how to do the transitions between different things. So I've had a lot of people asking about this. So this is something that hopefully we'll be launching soon. I'll be posting some of the videos for free on YouTube, and then I'll probably go a lot more in depth with a course. I haven't ironed out the details yet, but if you guys are interested, just let me know. So that's the first. Actually, I got a few questions about that. So, all right, so let's go to the next question, and I guess I'll need a window here. So, let me just make this bigger so you can see what I'm doing. So I think that becoming an iPhone developer, you really need to understand how to Google things, how to search for things. If you can't search for things, it's going to be very hard to learn iPhone development. Things are changing a lot. There's a lot of bugs that you run into that might be from the new version of iOS 7 or maybe the upcoming iOS 8 when that is released. And so being able to search is really important. So Google is really your friend when you are trying to solve different bugs. And anytime I want to do something that I don't know how to do, it's generally the first place I'll look. If I'm not looking at Google, then I am looking at Apple's guide. So if you go to developer.apple.com, and I'll just post that to HipChat. This is a great resource for you as well. Sometimes the answers are a little bit harder to find. So if you sign in, you should be able to make a free account. And if you do that, you'll be able to look at their stuff. So I'll just sign in real quick. And I'm part of 2 different teams, the RIT team and my own team, which I can publish apps. So academic institutions can get a free developer account for students to make apps. And so that's kind of exciting. Here you can get access to WWDC videos, which are really good for learning. And let me just see if I can scroll down so that you can see. So this link right here is great. And they also have some iOS development specific videos that they've been doing. All right, so Mitchell has a question and he wants to know how to call a phone number. And so what I would do is type in something that first comes to mind. So call iOS, maybe I'll do iOS call phone number from app or programmatically. And as you see, as I'm typing, I'm getting suggestions. So programmatically might be a good place to start. So let's press enter and search that. And it's already searched. So we can look at these different results. Let's go to the second one. And here we can see some answers. So let's just copy and paste this text. I have no idea what phone number that is. Is that a phone number? All right, so let's open up a new Xcode project. I'll just drag this over. We'll do single view application. I'll hit next and we'll call this demos. So I don't know what I'm going to do exactly. This might just be for this, or we might have some other demos to show you off with this. So first thing we're going to need is probably some kind of button that we can interact with. So I'll create a button and then I will open up the assistant editor. And with this, I will be able to connect that button to code. So let's just drag it down to the bottom and say button pressed. Now with that, I'm going to paste in the code. And let me know if the text font size is good, if you have any trouble reading. And I'll switch back to our .m file. All right, so I copied some code from Stack Overflow. I have no idea if it's going to work yet, but this is the process that I go through when I'm trying to figure something else out. And let's get rid of some of this code and then move this up so that my video is not totally in the way. So what we're trying to do here is create an NS URL to a phone number, and we're using the shared application to open up a URL. So there's actually a check here to see if we can open a URL to a phone number, and it's using a special URL, and this one may or may not work. We'll find out. And then it's trying to show a UI alert. So this code doesn't work by itself, so I'm going to fix it. I need to create a UI alert view right here. And that should make the code buildable. And then I'll just copy this name and paste it here to show it. So I've worked with UI alerts, so I know how to fix that bug. And that's something that you would have to discover when you are doing something. Now, the other thing is the simulator can only be opened once. So I had that game project running and we'll have to try again. Now it looks like I'll have to scale the iPhone down again. So let me switch windows and bring it back. I'm using my Retina screen to automatically. All right, so it's saying the call facility is not available. And that could be because I am running it off of the simulator. So I don't know off the top of my head because this isn't something that I've done, but I will bring up a real device and we can see if that behaves any differently. So using Reflector, I should be able to show you my screen on my iPhone. And just give me a moment and I'll bring this up. And again, if you have any questions, just post them and I can answer them. All right, so let's see if we can get this onto my actual device. So I'm switching the target from the simulator to my iPhone. I'll hit stop and run. And if Xcode likes me, it'll work. And then we should be able to see it on the screen. All right, so here I have the option to call this number, and I probably don't want to call this number because I don't know what it is, but that seems to work. And if you really wanted to test it, I would plug in your own phone number and see if that works. So that does seem to do something. All right, so that is an answer to Mitchell's question. All right, so and I had another question about games. Tony wanted to know if the course that I'm doing on game development would help him make something like Flappy Bird to something like Candy Crush. And yes, I think it would be a great starting place. I'm gonna see if I can muffle the sound of my computer because it is really spinning up from the live stream. All right. So next up, Nathan had a question about an odometer and being able to show like an odometer like in a, maybe he's trying to use the motion APIs to do something like that. So there's the core motion API, which are really interesting. If you just Google this, we'll get access to the framework, and it looks like there's a couple different tutorials that I could take a look into. The first one here is the core motion framework reference. And with this, we can see if someone's driving, and we should be able to get information about how fast they're moving. So I would look at the motion activity, I believe. This tells you if someone's running, if they're in an automobile, and using that, we should be able to get information from maybe one of the other APIs, like the accelerometer, for how fast they're moving. So we have accelerometer data, and we can get an acceleration property and use that. So that's right here, this property down here. So I might use something like that. But then the other aspect, so that's just getting the data. The other aspect for doing something like this is you want to be able to rotate a odometer. So we have to build out a new user interface. So you might want to look up rotate UI image. This is where I would start. And that's not exactly what we're looking for. So that's rotating just 90 degrees. We actually want to rotate a UI image view. And maybe we just want to do 20 degrees. Let's see what other people have done. And so here we see that there's a transform property, and the way the transform works is it uses radians instead of degrees. So we'll have to do a conversion from degrees into radians to actually make this work. But let's go ahead and add this to our demo project and see if we can get something working. So in the view controller, I'm going to add UI image view, and we're going to need an instance variable. So it's going to be UI image view. And I will call this our image view, maybe our odometer image view. Something like that should be good to get started with, and then we'll just go ahead and create this. Now, I always like to do an underscore, so I'll put an underscore in front of that, and then down here we will actually instantiate it, and we need to instantiate it with an image. So UI image view alloc init, and I don't have an image yet, so let's open up Photoshop, and all I need is like a triangle or something. So I'll bring Photoshop up here. And let's just do a new file. With this, we're probably going to want, I guess, like 20 or 30 wide, and then we'll go like 100 tall. We'll just call this a needle. Now I want the background to be transparent, so I'm going to turn off the background visibility after I add another layer. So now it's transparent, and then let's zoom in, and I just want a custom shape. Maybe just the line tool will be useful. Okay, it's giving us an arrow. I guess that could work. It's a ridiculously large. So if I wanted this to look nice, I could make it look better. I think I want to try and change the color. And let's do that again. Oh, there's the color. Okay, so we'll make this black, and then I'll get rid of the other shapes, and then move it in here. And then I'll just shrink it a little bit so it fits. Like that. So it's not going to look great, but it's something to start with. And that's all you need when you're doing some kind of a project. So all I want is a PNG file. And I want PNG because I want transparency, and we'll just save that to my desktop. And then from the Xcode window, if I can switch back to it, what we're going to do is we're just going to import a new file. So we're going to add a file to the demo project. And in here, we're going to go to my desktop and select Needle. And we want to make sure that we copy it into the group. That way, if we share this project with anyone, they will be able to access it. So now let's get back to our image view thing here. I want to init with an image, not just a init. And here we can pass in a UI image that we can load from disk. So image named, and then now I can just call it needle.png, and that will load the file. And if I wanted this to look good on Retina, I would have to add 2x, which means that it will treat it as a Retina image. And that's actually going to rename it when I modify it here, so that when we see this in code, it should show up half the size that we see here, because we'll be using a Retina screen. So now what I need to do is I have to say self.view add subview, and then the odometer image view. So it's really the needle, it's not the whole odometer. And it's running on my iPhone. And let's just push this to, let's push this to my iPhone simulator. And we should see it in the top left corner. And I'm going to just change the scale. It looks like the simulator is going to always pop up really big. So we'll just make it 50%. So you won't see the borders, but you can see my odometer thing right up here. And now what we'll want to do is rotate it. So I guess the easiest thing to do is to demo it with a NS timer. And we'll just do NS timer, scheduled timer with time interval, and we'll do the second one that pops up down here. So the time interval we'll do, let's do it every 0.2 seconds. So we'll do 0.2 here. The target will be self. The selector will be update. We'll just call it update. And then user info will be nil. Repeats will be yes. So I'm just going to create this really quickly. Normally I would have an instance variable. I'm not going to do that right now to hold on to it. And then what we want to do is something with that transform. So I should be able to say something like odometer image view dot transform is equal to CG affine transform, and then we're going to be looking for making a rotation. So that's this option down here, and this will make a rotation from an angle. Right now I could do something like, let's have an angle variable. So let's go ahead and create that up top. So this is going to be a float angle. And initially, we're going to set angle equal to 0. And then in here, just to get started, I'll just say angle plus plus, or angle is equal to angle plus 1. And then we can pass in our angle here. And I forgot the underscore, so let's go ahead and fix that bug in both places. So this is going to give us an angle, and if everything works out right, we will see that our angle is moving. So let's go ahead and move our stuff down. So I'll say odometer image view dot center is going to equal some new center point. And so we'll create a CG point make. So this will create a point. Let's go like 200 by 200. So that's going to move us down and to the right on the simulator. And actually, let's make the timer fire more regularly. So let's make it fire 10 times faster and do every 0.02 seconds. So now it's really spinning. So that kind of looks cool. And then I can go ahead and change the angle less. So I could say angle is equal to 0.2. I could do plus equal. So that will automatically add 0.2 instead of adding 1 every time, which will slow it down a little bit. It's still going to be pretty fast, but you can see we now have the ability to rotate something like this. And then I should be able to modify the anchor. So if we look at the anchor here, and that might be a property on the layer. So this is gonna, and let's just test this with CG point make, I'll go 0, 0. Now we can see that the anchor point has changed. So it's rotating around one of the corners. That's not exactly where we want it. So we're going to base it on its size. So we'll do odometer image view dot bounds dot size dot height. And then I want to do, maybe it's odometer image view dot bounds dot size dot width. And we want to divide the width by 2 so that it stays sort of centered. And hopefully if my math is correct, and it doesn't look like it is, so something like that should allow me to move it around a little bit. And depending on if it's not working or not, I try to track down things by turning things on or off. So here we can see that the odometer view is spinning a little bit differently that way. And I'll just try dividing the height by 2, but that's probably going to behave the same way it did, and I don't see it. All right, so I'm not exactly sure where it is. Let's just try a constant value like 20 and see where that puts it. And I don't see it at all, so maybe we need to go somewhere else. So that's a sort of a starting point. I want to move on because we have a bunch of other questions. All right, so let's go to some of the questions in the chat channel right now. So let's go to Deva's question. Deva wants to know how to use a block parameter as a method. And I actually recently just did something like this. So let's try and get this working. Now, what I would do here is I always like to search how to use something with Google. So I'll search for how to do a block parameter on iOS. And that's going to be a search term I look for. And on Stack Overflow, there's a solution here. We can see if it's any good. So I'm just looking down here. I like this approach right here. So we'll do something like this. So I'll just copy this code. All right, so at the very top of my program, I'm going to put this code and I'll explain what it's doing in a minute. And then we're just going to copy in their test code. And I'm probably going to delete everything inside and sort of repurpose it for our purposes. So in here, I am going to put this after our update loop. And I guess we can run with this. I'm just going to run it with the method call. And there is one important thing here. If you have a nil block, your app will crash. So let's do the very basic here and just try and invoke this method. So I just created a method that I copied from Stack Overflow. So I can pass in a block here. Now, if I pass nil and I pass in an array here, let's do 1, 2, 3. We can go ahead and we can run this. And then at the top, we have a block that takes one argument. So all right, so here is our function call or our method call. And if we rebuild, we can see if we have the right type. And I don't think everything is correct here. So let me just go back to Stack Overflow. Yeah, there's a missing parentheses up top. That's what I thought. So we should see something that looks more like this. And so the syntax is a little bit weird. I'll call it my block. So a block is a chunk of code that we can just run anytime we want. And now our errors are gone. So at the very top, what I did up here is type def allows us to create a new type. And the syntax looks really weird, but we're creating a method signature or a function signature for a function that's going to take one argument that's going to be an array. And it's called the arguments. And so if we go ahead and we run this, it should crash on start. And it does. We get a thread exec bad access. And the reason we get this is because you need to always check to make sure that the block is not nil. So you would say if not block, or if block, sorry, not if not block. And then if we do that, we can make sure that this doesn't run bad code. Otherwise, we can run into an issue where it crashes. So that protects against a crash. Now, if we actually supply a valid block, we can pass in code here. So what I would do here is instead of passing nil, if we look at the message signature, we need to pass in a block that takes the argument. So this will be an NS array and then args. And we should be able to open up a bracket. And so what we see is the arguments are printed out here. So that is how we can do a block and print out things with it. It's a little bit weird, but the block that we're passing in right now is what I'm creating right here. Sometimes you can just pass that in and do other things with it, and it's only executing down in here. So we're doing a method call, and there could be other logic. So we could have logic to do stuff, and then it would do something else. And then at the very end, we can run this custom function. So it's kind of like a callback at the end of a method. And we'll see this a lot when we work with something like the UI view. There's these animation blocks. So what I can do is I can animate with duration, and I can give it a time interval. So over 0.3 seconds, I can do an animation right here where we could even animate the odometer view so that it moves up and down. So we could move the odometer image view dot center to a new point if we make it. And we can do 200 by 400. And now what we should see is that we are moving the odometer down over 0.3 seconds. And that was a little bit subtle. So let's do it over 2 seconds and rerun. And you should see that it's spinning, but it's also going to move south. And it's going to be sort of going down in this direction. So blocks can be really helpful, and we use them a lot. I use them a lot with the animations. I don't generally create them myself, but that is how you would pass a block like that. All right, so Deva, let me know if that answered your question on how to use blocks. All right, Peter has a question, and all right, so Peter wants to use an API in his code, and he wants to know where to store the credentials. I generally put the credentials in the app delegate, not the PCH file. Either that, or I'll create a custom constants file that will store information. So in something like the bomb dodge game that I'm working on, oops, Xcode's acting a little weird. And we have some kind of constant somewhere in here. As you can see, I've got a ton of code files. I don't remember where I put it. Here we go, game constants. And in here, we have a bunch of constants. Now, in order to do constants properly in an Objective-C file, you'll want to declare them with xturn, which means that there's going to be an implementation of it somewhere else. Then you have your strings. A lot of times we'll use the constant property. When you're working with the NS string, you want to make sure that it's star constant, not constant star. That will work appropriately for a pointer value. And with that, we can declare all the constants. Now, we have a ton of constants here. In the .m file is where we actually have the implementation details for those types of content. So much like where you would put an API key, you could put a key in here just to have all of your information stored in one spot. And then in the PCH file, we probably do put this in here. And yes, I do. So in the prefix header file, we do have a link to all of our game constants just to keep this file a little bit less crowded. And then I have a couple more constants down here that we do use. And I don't think we have any APIs right now hooked up with bomb dodge, but I'm going to be adding Flurry analytics. So I would make an entry in here to store the key here. Now I have read that it's better to store things in a secure location. So one other thing that you could look at is the keychain. And if we go back to Safari, we can just do a search. API identifiers. The downside of storing them in code is that they are potentially something that a hacker could decrypt, and they could decompile your binary, and they could set through it in a debugger, and they might be able to see the constant. And if that was like a secret that was really important, they could then potentially do some kind of thing where they do something like that, where they can do a man-in-the-middle attack or compromise something. So there can be issues, though. Generally, for my apps, not a whole lot of people download them, so I don't have to worry about security too much. I'm not doing anything crazy right now with financial stuff or anything like that in my app, so it's not really a risk that I run into. So if you can, I would recommend looking at maybe the support for the API that you're trying to integrate. So Flurry Analytics is something that you can integrate, and I think when they show how to integrate it, if I just look at their getting started guide, I think they just post the stuff in their code. And so they just post it directly where it's going to go. All right, so Jordan has a question. Jordan, I'm not sure what you mean by what UI kit is used for drawing apps. Are you looking for how to get started? If so, I would search Core Graphics, or I would search Core Graphics iOS probably, to make sure that you don't get the Mac stuff. So if you do that, let me just post this link. This is the reference. It's not actually very helpful. You want to find the guide. And if we go back, this is the guide, I believe. Maybe. Nope, that's just an overview. Ray's tutorial is pretty good on Core Graphics. So if you want to learn how to do some basic drawing, you can draw all of this with the graphics APIs. And that's for customizing like this table view. So it initially looks like this, and what he's going to do is use graphics to change the layout so that if we scroll all the way to the bottom, we'll see that it looks more like this. So that's one way to do it. How to take a picture of a view. There's a new screenshot API for taking a picture of a view. So if you search for screenshot of iOS view, you're going to look for something like programmatically take a screenshot. And I'm going to look for something that's current. So something that's after the last WWDC, because I know there's an API change to do stuff. And here we have a new API. Let's see if it's actually linked here. So let me just copy this over. All right, so in here, we're looking for a screenshot API. So I'm just doing a command find or command F to find something. And here we have a function to snapshot view after screen updates. And I believe this is new. It's available in iOS 7 or later. And so if we go ahead, we should be able to include this in our demo project and take a screenshot of what everything looks like. So let's go back to not Bomb Dodge, but the demo app. And in here, I'm going to take a screenshot right after we do a animation. So that's the API. And what I would do is I'd say something like self.view, snapshot view, Actually, this isn't going to give me an image, which is what I was looking for. It's going to give me a view that I can just throw in there. So that's one way to get it. And so then this is going to give you a custom view. And then using that view, I guess you could do something with it. So it looks like there's a way to do so we need more than just a view here. And it looks like the original code might actually work. Okay, so let's just go with that code because that I know is going to give us an image. I just skipped over it. So this is going to use some of the graphics programming stuff. So getting back to like doing some graphics drawing, what we have here is a way to render stuff. So let's try and see if we can use this snapshot view that I took, which is supposed to be a high-speed way of getting the information captured. And instead of saying self.view, we'll just pass in the snapshot view. So what we're going to do here, and I'm just looking at this pretty quickly, is we're going to get the size, and we'll just get the size from whatever our snapshot view is. So I'm going to change this code to just use the snapshot view, which is what hopefully works. I've never used it before. We had to pass in an image size. Now, the wrong thing about this is that there's actually a couple different methods for this, and we actually want the context with options. And I know this because I've done a lot of work with graphics on iOS, and you want to get the scale. So here we'll pass in the image size, and then you want it to be, I think it can be opaque. The scale here, we're going to, I think, pass in 0, and that will do retina and non-retina correctly. So we can look at this. If you pass in 0 and you can't see it because it's all the way down off screen. But what I'm seeing down here is let me just paste in the comment here. So the scale factor is applied to the bitmap. So if we're on a retina screen, you would need to use 2, but there's this option to do a 0 here, and that will automatically choose the device's main screen. So that will do retina or non-retina depending on what the device is. Now, almost all iPhones, actually all iPhones running on iOS 7 are going to be retina devices. So it's always going to be a retina, and it's going to appear blurry if you don't do this properly. All right, so now it's going to try and render the layer, and then it's rendering it to the context, which we're creating right here. And then we're grabbing an image from the context, storing it in an image, and then we should be able to do something with this image. So let's save the image to disk. So let's say view image. And actually, I think there's a method, UIImage, and we're going to get the JPEG representation for the image. So view image is what we pass in. I think I want one to have no compression. So again, I need to look at the documentation here. It's from 0 to 1. 0 means maximum compression or the lowest quality, while 1 represents the least compression or highest quality. So I want high quality. This is going to give me a NS data object. And we'll call this image data. And then I should be able to write the image data to disk. So write to file. And now I need a file path, which I need to calculate. And then we'll do atomically, just because that's a safer route. So this is just to show what it's going to look like, because I don't want to put it back on the screen. I guess I could put it back on the screen in an image view, but I think it would be more interesting if we can save it to disk, because you might want to upload this file. So let's calculate the file path. So we need the documents directory. And I'm just going to create a variable for that. And we have to use a special method called NSSearch path for directories. And hopefully you can see all the code I'm typing here. Um, NS search, no, it's not NS search, it's NS documents. And don't do documentation directory, do document directory. And then the domain mask is NS user domain. And tilde is yes. So those are the properties that we need. Now this returns an array, so we need to get the first object. So I'll pass in the first object to get it, which will give us that document directory, and it's always the first object. Now what we can do is we can create a file path. So we'll do another NS string. File path is equal to, and here we'll use the document directory, and then there's a string by appending path component that we can leverage here to add the file path. So this will be our image.jpg, and it's .jpg. And if we do that and we cross our fingers, hopefully we'll be saving this to disk. Now, I believe there is a, yeah, I'm going to go for this second option here. So I'm going to rewrite this a little bit. So it's going to be the file path options. I think I just passed nil for that. I'm not positive, but I do want to pass an error object in case things don't work. And do I still get the atomically? Oh, maybe that's where let's check out what the options are. Data write options, and we'll do writing atomic. So we have to pass in. So it's slightly different, but that's what I want. And the error is going to help us determine if anything bad happens. And this is a really good thing to do all the time you are writing to disk. So you create an error object. It's just NS error, and you assign it to nil. So it's set to nil. Now, if this error object is not nil, then we know we have a problem. So here we'll just print out a message, failed to save image. And let's print out what the error message is. So we just do error localized description. So I do all this because sometimes you mess something up and things don't work. And we've got some warning appearing. I don't know why we're getting that. Maybe we shouldn't be doing this call in the view did load. So let's move all of this code to do a snapshot to our button pressed. So I'll just paste it down here and we'll comment out our phone call code. So I'll just do the command / to do that. We'll go ahead and we'll rerun this. And now when we hit button, hopefully we have an image saved. I'm going to open up the iPhone simulator. So here I have a reference to it. Now, the file path we're in is it's the user's my user account, library application support iPhone simulator. And we go into 7.1. We are running on the Retina, not the 64-bit. I look at applications, and we're going to look for the newest one. So here we have our demos, documents. Here we have an image, and it is completely black. So that's great. So I'll try one more time, see if I can figure this out. And we go back to Finder after we hit the button. And we have a totally black image. All right, so I'm not sure if this method's working, so let's go ahead and switch back to our main view. So I'll just say snapshot view is equal to self.view. So that'll be a quick way to test out to see if like the default works. And then we switch back. And look at that. We have a screenshot that works. So you probably haven't seen the whole screenshot since it's been jumping off screen. But here's the screenshot, and it's not completely black. So it's still got the button down from when I pressed it. And it's got the arrow that's moved down. So that is an answer to your question. All right, Tuan had a question. I'm going to jump to some more questions before we go back to more of your questions, Jordan. He had a question about why use class instead of import. And when we're working with a project that's got multiple files, so let's pull up game menus because this is a good example of when you would do it, is here we have multiple views on the screen. And what we want to do is we want to show different views, and I have multiple code files. And when we're working with multiple code files, we don't always want to use an import statement in our main file. So the things that we use import for are something like UIKit, or anytime you have a protocol declaration that you need to use. Now, in the case of the game here, I have a store.h and a store.m file. This just keeps track of how many purchases a user has made, and I don't want to import that code into the .h file if I don't need to, and this will actually speed up your build time. So what that means is the time that it takes for me to press the button right here to the time that the app actually opens up. And so let's try that out. So we'll go ahead and build it. And it says it's already running. So let's try that again. So it was successful on my screen, and I do not see it running. Looks like our simulator's not feeling very happy. Let's try changing it. All right, so sometimes Xcode doesn't work, so I'm going to quit it, and I'm going to quit the simulator, and then we're going to start it up again. And in here, we'll just try and run the app. All right, so the game just started. And this takes a bit of time. It's pretty quick on my computer, but if I tried something that was a little bit more complex, it could take longer. It could take minutes. It could take like 20 minutes. If you're doing something complex, like maybe if you're building Mozilla Firefox from source code, that would take a long time. Or if you were building Windows, I know Windows takes forever to build. The same with building Mac OS 10 or the iPhone operating system, the iOS 7 operating system takes a long time. So anytime we have an opportunity to forward declare a class, we're going to take that advantage because it's going to speed up the whole process from clicking that run button to actually seeing the app appear. And so all you need to do is you do an @class store. And so store is the class I want to forward declare. And I'm using it down here. So without a forward declaration, you would get a warning saying unknown type. And so your other option is to import store.h, but I've already told you that this is going to slow down the whole process. Now, you probably won't notice it for 1 or 2 files, but if you have a really big game and you keep adding to it, you will notice a difference if you do this incorrectly. And so here we want to forward declare the store, and then in the .m file. So I just switched over from the game.h to the .m, and in here you'll see that I do the import statement. Now, the reason we do this is because all the header files are sort of used together in the initial steps of building the application to figure out, okay, how are all the pieces going to fit together? And if you just do a forward declaration, you can remove some of the details so it doesn't have to copy in all of the code. Every time we do an import statement, what happens is all of the code basically gets copied in, and you can imagine doing a copy paste, inserting hundreds or thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands of lines of code just from one statement. And so if we can remove the amount of code that we copy and paste in on that initial building step, then it just makes things speed up. All right, so we had a question about supporting upside down device orientations for all of the applications. And yes, we can support different orientations. So right now, I am supporting some of the orientations. I could support more orientations in the game menu game and things might look a little bit weird, so that I have our standard orientation and things would flip around. So we'll notice right now that the upside down is not working. I believe in code, you'll have to enable that. By default, it doesn't work all the time for iPhone. So I think there's a little bit more logic here to add to make that work in the code file. And that is where you would go into the view controller, and we'll see if we can add it down here. I think it's called prefers interface orientation for presentation. And if we do this, we should be able to return UI interface orientation. And I should be able to do all. Maybe not. Let's do the upside down. Ordered with the UI interface portrait. And then in this file, I'll select both of those, and hopefully I'll cross my fingers this will work. And it's still not working. So there might be another setting that I have to set to get that to work. But generally, you don't support the upside down on the iPhone. It's not done a whole lot. So that's how you might do something like that. All right, I guess, Jordan, back to some of your questions. Your next question is you want to include a feed of recent user image submissions after they've altered them. What would you need to implement that? And for that, you'll need a table view. So you'll need to do something like I did with the font table view demo. I just posted the code on GitHub. I mean, this is just one of the pieces of the puzzle. So this is how you would display information. You'd have to use a table view. And so I'll go ahead and run this. And this just pulls in, I think, 4 quotes or so from Steve Jobs, and I just formatted them with different fonts and displayed them. So you'd have a way to display images, something like this. This is using a custom table view cell, which I believe you can see here in the storyboard file. If I can zoom out and find it. And so the custom cell is right here. It just has 2 labels. It's set up with auto layout so that it scales properly. And you could just throw in image views here and set them up like that. So that's one piece of the puzzle. The other thing is you need to pull in images from a web server, so you need to download stuff. The easiest thing, I think, to get started for a quick demo would be to use parse.com. They've got tutorials on how to get set up. And if you go to their docs, you can get started with their iOS SDK, and you can pull in files. So if I click on iOS, this will show you how to get set up. You basically can send them data. So you should be able to send them images and things like that, and then you should be able to download them from them. You could use that, or you could use some other API to save the stuff. To remove in-app purchases, To remove images from all right. Sorry, my video cut off and I wasn't paying attention. So to remove images, you would, sorry, not remove images, remove ads. You would have to set up an in-app purchase that would unlock something. All right, so see if I can find it. I'm gonna stop this. I have another app that does use in-app purchases. I haven't updated it in like 2 or 3 years. And I don't know where I saved it. No, it's not in that repository, so it's called Wallpaper Evolution. It's on the App Store still. I need to update it. There's a lot of things I probably need to change about it. The in-app purchases stuff that I'm using is no longer supported. Using Urban Airship, they've changed it because Apple started supporting in-app purchases. So I would definitely check out tutorials on the new stuff. But I believe somewhere in here, wow, there's a lot of stuff. I'm just going to do a search for, what would it be called? Ads. Is ads enabled? So all I do is I have an identifier to know if ads are. There's a paid version that doesn't have ads. And I don't know if that's the exact attribute I use for the store or the purchase manager. So somewhere in here, I probably have something that can unlock a feature. And I think I just followed some of the guides that you can find online. So disable ads is probably the best thing to search for iOS in-app purchase. So IAP. And you would just create an in-app purchase that would be able to turn that off. So if I go to iTunes Connect and I sign in, we can look at some of the apps that I have in progress. And one of them is the Protect the Bomb game. So if I click on that, I think there's some in-app purchases. If I go to manage in-app purchases, and here I have a bunch of purchases. So let's say I wanted to get like twice as many points. I can see the attributes here, and I can set the price. The tier 3 means it's going to be $3 in the US, and it's consumable. So there's just different attributes that you can set up. And so basically when someone purchases something, you can have logic because everything has a unique identifier. So this unique identifier is right here. And if you have this identifier, then it will be something that you can check for in code and then disable ads. And so then you would just have a way to turn them off. Okay, so your next question is about in-app purchases and All right, so we talked a little bit about GitHub, and I do recommend using GitHub. So GitHub is a place that I post my code to. I have private projects, which you can see here. So I've got course material stuff that's sort of like in development stuff that's all private. I've got my apps that I'm working on, and then some client work that I've done. And then everything else here is public stuff. So I just posted code for this auto layout. And this is just a way where I can share code with other people and do stuff like that. So GitHub is really good for version control. They have a little guide on how to get set up, and I would highly recommend that versus doing it with your Mac. The way I look at it is version control allows me to make sure all of my stuff is backed up to some other location. And so I'm really not too worried if I were to lose my laptop or something like that, because almost all of the code that I'm working on from a programming perspective is backed up online. And that means that I could get a new laptop and then I could just download all the code from my private repository, which is my collection of code, and I would be able to get going right away. So I think version control is amazing. It makes me a lot more confident about making changes because I know I can roll back to a previous version, and I know I can look at old code if I need to, as well as work with other people on the same code base. I can have someone else update a feature while I update a feature, and we can merge those changes without just having to copy and paste between different folder files, and that's just a real mess. So it automates a lot of that. So I would not use GitHub, or I would not use Git locally without having it backed up somewhere. I mean, it's good to just play around with, but you're gonna want to have your projects backed up to some repository. And GitHub is free for under, I think, 5 repositories. So it's a good place to start. And all right, so then you had a question about best way to implement a loading screen. I actually did a tutorial on loading screens. If you just go to YouTube, let's go to my video manager playlists. So that is my playlist that shows the creation of a... Do you need a login screen or a loading screen? What's... I just read it real quick, and so maybe I'm giving you the wrong thing. All right, so for a loading screen, Apple generally doesn't recommend doing a loading screen on iPhone apps. Apple wants the app to feel responsive, and anytime you insert a loading screen, you're going to make the app feel sluggish or slow, and it's not going to respond right away. So I would search for a loading screen, and in the human interface guidelines, they definitely recommend not using the starting image to do a splash screen. You can do a loading screen. The way you would work the way it would work is you just need to start up a special view controller, and you'd need to display an image, or you'd need to display something when it first starts up. So in like the game menus thing, we could go ahead and do a new file and add another view controller, UI view controller, and we'll call this loading screen. And I'll create it. I'll do landscape. And I want to drag something onto it. So let's do like a loading screen here. You could print out some kind of message, and you could have some kind of spinner, and then all you would do on your main view controller. So when we start this app right now, if it works, we see this screen. But what we can do is the main entry point is going to be our view controller class. And so when this starts up, I could create an instance of the loading screen. I don't know which one I'm probably modifying something I don't want to modify. I'm gonna make a copy of this so I don't trash too much. So in this, I would then create a loading screen. So we need to import the loading screen. And then once it's imported, then in the viewDidLoad method, we're going to create an instance of it. So I'm just going to do it all right here. And loading screen view controller, alloc, init, we'll set it up. And then I have a method in here that I wrote to show a view controller, and I can just pass in the loading screen. However, you're probably not going to want to do it this way. We'll just see if this works. And so now we see some initial loading data. So this we can then animate if we hook everything up. We can make that spinner spin. We can make the text change. We can show an image in the background. So you could really customize it. All you have to do is show it on start. The way you're probably going to do it is you're going to do self present view controller, and here we'd pass in loading screen. And animated, you could say no, and it would just show up right away, and then we'll pass nil for the completion block and go ahead and run it. And it didn't appear. I might need to move this code into the viewDidLoad, or viewDid will appear, using the APIs, because this isn't necessarily on screen yet. So if you use this API, you'll have to do something like this. And we can see if this works any different. No, it still doesn't like us, so let's move it to you will or did appear. So it's actually on the screen, and we do need to call a super method here. So you did appear animated, and I'm gonna cut everything from here, paste it right in here. We'll get rid of the other method since we're not going to use it, and we'll cross our fingers and hopefully, okay, so now it works. So the problem that we're running into is if you try to present something using the normal APIs, it won't appear until the view is actually created. And in view did load and in view will appear, nothing's on a screen yet. So in order to use the present view controller API, you'll have to do that. Now, I'm doing some special stuff in here using some containment APIs, which is why it worked when I did it with my show view controller method, but that's something custom I wrote, and that is this code down here. So that's a little more than I want to get into right now. But then you can make this disappear after a certain amount of time. So if you have a loading screen, you can then have some kind of logic in here that fires a timer off. So I would then use a timer. So use ns timer to stop loading screen, something like that. Let me know if that helps. All right, so we got another question on plugins from Deva. I don't use any plugins right now for Xcode development. I have looked at a couple. Actually, okay, so that's not entirely true. It's not really a plugin. There's this tool called Accessorizer, and I use this sometimes. I haven't been using it recently, and you can get this on the App Store. Let's see if I can pull it up. So here's the App Store. If I can spell it right. It's a developer tool. It's pretty good. I think it's $5. I'll copy the link. This just makes it easier, less code to display something on the screen. Not display something on the screen, but it can generate properties for you so that you can just write the instance variables and something like that. Or it has the ability, one of the other things I use it for, let me open it up again, is let's say I want to archive something. So I'm going to have NSString. I'm going to create some kind of new object. So maybe I have a title attribute and I have a description attribute. I can type. And then I have maybe a UI image. So a profile picture. And that probably wouldn't be the best use of this, but actually I don't want to do an image here. You would do a string for the file path. So profile picture file path or something like that. And then let's have some ints. So let's do number of days and then some floats. Speed of scroll. So I don't know what this is, but maybe it's like a profile setting for something. And with the key archiving, I can just click this button up top. It was really quick, and it took all of the ivars, which are in this panel, which are my instance variables, and created the archiving for me. So this is code that I can copy and paste to Xcode. And in something like my store screen, I have this type of code down here. So you would be able to just insert this code. This would encode everything. It would unarchive everything, and it uses constants like I like to use to make sure that I'm loading from the right thing. So this is using the key archiving and unarchiving. And as you can see, I wrote like 5 lines of code or whatever to create the variables, and it spit out like 40 lines of code. Or if I can count right, that's like 30 lines of code to do stuff for me. Beyond the accessorizer, there was one that I was interested in using. There's a plugin, and I don't know if I bookmarked it. Let me check my bookmarks here. My readings list. How can I see my... There's a developer I follow on Twitter who talks about this. NS Hipster has some stuff too, which you could look at. So that might be something to look at for Xcode. It looks like there's a bunch of things that he talks about. I haven't actually tried any of these. So it would probably be good and worth my while to look into plugins to see if they would help me do anything faster or better. Here's a listing of plugins. There was a color one that I was interested in using. I don't know what it was called. Might be Color Sense. So if you're a designer, if this is the right thing, Look at the demo video, see if this is any good. So here we can see a little color appears on top, and if I can hopefully zoom in, you can see that allows you to then get a color picker here and choose a color rather than typing in random numbers. So I could see that as being useful, especially when I'm in the design phase for an application. So that might be it. I'm not sure if there's another one. I haven't installed it yet, but it's something worthwhile checking out. Is there anything in particular you're looking for, Deva, on working with Xcode plugins? All right, so I don't have any other questions, I think. So unless you guys have a couple last questions, I think we're going to end in the next few minutes. I did get one question, I guess, from someone who's run into issues where they're trying to learn stuff, they're trying to do stuff, and they get stuck with something. And I think the the best thing to do is you have to search whatever the error message is. So when you get stuck, you have to Google it, you have to, and if you're trying to get help from someone like me or some other developer that you know, a friend who might know more about programming than you really have to copy and paste the entire error message. You have to take a screenshot of what's going on, because it's really hard to help someone else without some context. So I got one really vague question where someone's stuck on stuff, but I can't help you if you don't give me the information that I need so that I can help you. So that's one thing to think about. And again, Google is really good for finding answers to a lot of things. And back to your thing on plugins, if my take on things is like, if something's not working for you, that's when I look into how to make it faster or better. A lot of times when I'm new to something, I'm not quite ready to commit to learning a new thing on top of a new thing. So I might not look into plugins right away until I actually have a pain point and I'm like, okay, well, picking colors in code is really hard. So I want to make that easier. And so then I would look at using a plugin. But until then, I think it's better to just go about doing stuff and then maybe check back a couple months later and see, okay, is there something I can do to optimize the way I'm working through the materials, or is there something that can improve the whole experience? All right, yeah, and if you guys have questions, feel free to send me an email. It's just paulsolt@iphonedev.tv. And you can find me on Twitter, though Twitter doesn't let you post really long questions. So email's usually the best thing. I try to respond quickly, though I do have a backlog now from that email blast I sent out. So you gotta give me some time to catch up on email. I'm juggling a lot of things right now, and I will try and get back to you. I answer every email I get. It just takes some time to catch up. All right, thank you for watching, and I will catch you guys later.